Welcome to the Chat and Dematt podcast. Today we are giving you an inside look into a top international judge and groomer. Deemed the celebrity pet stylist, this special guest is a Kenchii Brand Ambassador, an expert speaker, and certainly knows what it takes to level up your grooms. It's Jonathan David. Hi Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us on the Chat and Dematt podcast. How are you doing today?
I am doing so good today. Thank you for having me.
No problem, it's a pleasure to have you. Do you maybe just want to jump in by telling us a bit about your journey as a dog groomer?
Sure. I'm a very old groomer. Not old in age. I still am very youthful, but I've been grooming for almost 33 years. I started very young. I was a teenager. I worked in a pet store where they sold puppies, and I had no intention of going into grooming. That was not my plan. I thought I was going to be a veterinarian.
Yeah.
And then I met the groomer there, and working at this puppy store is how I learned about puppy mills and all of the the negative side of all of that. But one of my responsibilities was to bathe and dry the puppies. So I would trim their feet and trim their face to make them look really cute. And the groomer there said, you really have a knack for this. You should go to grooming school. And I was like, I don't want to be a dog groomer, But I really ended up liking it. And I thought, well, I'll do it for the time being until I figure out exactly what I'm going to do. Because veterinary school was kind of, I loved working with animals, but like the sad part of veterinary and the other part of it, that's the part I didn't want to deal with. So I kind of just fell into grooming. It just sort of fell in my lap. I was good at it. I went to school for it and realized that I actually just sort of loved it. So I pursued it. And then in my younger days, I was a, New York City club kid. I was really into the nightlife. So I moved to New York and I thought, well, I can groom dogs. So I'm going to get a job, grooming dogs. And I was able to, fortunately, get a job at this really amazing upscale salon on the Upper East Side where, high profile celebrities and everybody would bring their dogs. And this woman had the store that sold really high end merchandise for dogs and a whole other world that I didn't know existed coming from a small town in my state. So I realized there was this whole other world of grooming out there that I didn't know. And so I sort of stuck with it because it was always my ambition to have a store like this one. And then I sort of started going to the shows and I learned about the competitions and then I got interested in that. And it was just one thing led to another, and competing led to judging and speaking and being on television, and all of these things unfolded. And here it is 33 years later. I am Jonathan David, celebrity pet stylist, if you will. And it's just become a labor of love. It's my passion. It's something, there's that saying, I'm sure everybody's heard it. If you do something you love, you never feel like you're working. That's kind of how it is. Even though this is hard work and we beat our bodies to hell, doing what we do, we love it. And that's why we do it.
Yeah, it's like a vocational thing. It's like being a singer or something. It is hard work, but your passion drives you more so than the money aspect.
Right. People think, I'm sure you've seen these funny memes that they've been going around for years where people say, like, it's 4 pictures of, what people think I do for a living and what I actually do for a living. It's very much like that. People think, people say, oh, you get to play with dogs all day. What a great job. And I'm like, no, that's not what it's like at all. But still we love it. And it is a labor of love.
So in your job title, you are a celebrity pet stylist. How do you think you got that title? Was it working in that Upper East Side salon where you got introduced to those celebrity clientele? Was it word of mouth?
Yeah, it's funny how, I don't know where the first time I was ever called a celebrity pet stylist came from, to be honest. It was something that I've several people have used it in advertising when I'm going to be, speaking or judging or something like that. But I think it started out because I groomed a lot of celebrities' dogs when I lived in New York City. So when I would do magazine articles, people would dub me as the celebrity pet stylist because of my celebrity clientele. But I think through the years, being that I've had the great privilege and the honor of speaking and judging internationally and working with, major brands and things like that, in the industry, some people have referred to me as a celebrity pet stylist, and I think it's, listen, we're all the same. We're all pet groomers. We all do what we love. You know, do I have notoriety? Yes. Do people, you know, like to follow my work? I'm very honored and flattered that people do. I don't think of myself as a celebrity in any way. I'm just happy that people admire my work and that I can pass on what I have learned from other great people in the industry before me, and there will be other great people after me.
No, definitely. And I think one of the things looking through your career is that you've always jumped at opportunities and you've always really taken them. For the example, you were on Groomer Has It on Animal Planet, and you've gone into judging and you've really jumped at those opportunities. Do you think that's a key part to getting success as a groomer?
I think yes. There's a lot of aspects to that. When I became a groomer, and the very first time I went to a grooming show, it was called Intergroom, and it was an international show. And I saw all these people that were up on platforms doing demonstrations and speaking about their craft. And I thought, I want to do that one day. Like, I want to be that person up on that stage. It was something that I had a goal to aspire towards. So I started asking, how do you get there? Like, how do you become one of these people? And everybody said, you've got to put in the work. You have to compete, make a name for yourself, and, you know, try to make the connections, and those things will eventually come. So nothing fell in my lap as far as, you know, the opportunities I've had. I have worked really hard, and sometimes I have, you know, you hear these stories about, like, and this is, you know, I'm really not comparing like becoming, you know, like a famous actor, but you hear these stories about where somebody wants to get a part and they go through really crazy lengths to get in front of that casting director. You know what I mean? I have done things like that. You know, I submitted lots of applications to reality shows to get on TV. You know, I submitted documentation to the show promoters of what kinds of seminars I think I could do for them and how I think I could be better. I didn't know how to get into speaking. I actually, one day after I had done Groomer Has It, it's funny how Groomer Has It happened was one of my clients saw the casting call for this reality show, and she sent it to me, and they were specifically looking for male groomers at this point. So she said, this might as well have your name on it. So I sent in an application, and they called me the next day. And 2 days later, I was on a flight to LA. It happened so fast because they were right at the end of casting, and I ended up getting picked to do the show. And of course, being on a television show, you can use that to sort of, you know, catapult yourself and use that as a little bit of clout, you know. But that was just to get my name out there. Nobody said, oh, he's been on a reality show, we're going to hire him to speak and judge. It doesn't work like that. So I created like an outline of all of my topics and a little resume, and I created this little booklet, and I printed up a whole bunch of them, and I went to a grooming show, and I handed them to the show promoters. And the show promoters looked at it like, what is this? Because nobody had ever done that. And I said, this is what I can offer you. Yeah. And they were very impressed that I had gone to the lengths of creating sort of like a resume and a proposal, you know? Yeah. And so I handed it to them, and I got hired. And that was my very first speaking assignment. And it just sort of, you know, unveiled from there. But I think once you have, you know, if you've been on television, whether it's a reality show or even your local news segment, or if they do a news story about you in the local paper, or if you compete and you win, you go to the paper and you say, look, I'm a groomer in my town. I won this competition. They will do a story about you. They love that kind of stuff. So you have to do the work and put yourself out there. And then from that, you start to build up, the opportunities start to come your way. And so I think, you know, yes, definitely being a high profile groomer, it helps you get more opportunities. But truthfully, your clients, like all my clients, they don't know who Jonathan David is in the industry. They know I do things. They know I write. They know that I speak and judge. But to the extent that groomers know, no, the clients don't know. So you have to make them aware of it. And, you know, and then once they know, they feel like, I've had clients who have said, you know, I Googled you. I didn't realize you do all of these things. And suddenly they realize I have one of the best people I can get my hands on, and they're willing to pay a premium. They're willing to work with your schedule. They're willing to, you know, kind of be very loyal. So I think, yes, all of those opportunities help you become a better groomer. They help you be more successful in your business. But does becoming big in the industry necessarily equate to a successful grooming business? No, there's still work involved.
Yeah, no, 100%. I suppose for groomers, it's deciphering what you want to be in the grooming industry. Like, if you are passionate about just grooming animals, but getting that notoriety shouldn't be your priority, upskilling yourself should be. Whereas if you do want to be on those podiums and on those stages, yes, you have to upskill, but you have to be able to sell yourself almost and have that gift of the gab.
Well, exactly. I mean, I could talk a great game and say I'm all these things, but if I get up on a stage and I do a really poor job on a dog, nobody's going to come back to my seminars, So it's partly doing the work and getting the skill, but it's also, you have to have a personality, because one of the things that people have always told me, and I always take feedback from my audiences and people send me messages, that is so important to me, because when people will say to me, people have said to me, I love going to your seminars, but when you groom a black poodle and I'm in the back of the room, I can't really see what you're doing. So that makes me realize, okay, I need to have lighter dogs because it picks up the light and it's easier for everybody in the back to see. So that's a note that I said to myself. When people say, I really love the way you speak, maybe you could go a little bit more into detail with what you're doing while you're doing it. So those are little notes. So now when I speak, I make sure that I tell them what they can't see in front of me, because they're 50 feet away from me behind, another 100 people. So it's a learning curve, and you definitely start to hone your skill as a speaker and get better at all of that. But you have to have the skills as a groomer, obviously, first to become a leader in any industry. In any industry, if you want to be a leader, you have to do the footwork first to get there.
Of course. And what tips would you give to a groomer who really does want to level up their grooming and become a leader?
First thing is never stop going for continuing education. Styles change, new products hit the market, techniques change. So definitely go for continuing education, and don't just learn from one or two people. Get a diverse education. When I would compete, I would go to not only my judge for a critique, but I would go to everybody at the show who I knew was a judge and ask them for their critique on my groom, so that I could get a really well-rounded opinion of what I had just done and make changes that I thought really made sense to me. Maybe a judge said to me, I would go tighter here, but another judge says, no, that's fine, I would leave it. I would kind of then look at it and say, okay, now I realize it's actually very subjective. So which one feels better to me? Which one? And then once you find a style that's yours, once you know who you are as a groomer and what you're going to put out, you be you and you stick to you, and you'll prosper from there.
And would you say that there's any key products that gives you a great finish on the groomer, levels up your grooming?
Absolutely. Products are everything. Many people know I've been working with Kenchii for many, many years now. This is my 9th year working with them as their brand ambassador. I know, 9 years. It's actually 9.5 years we're going on. So it's, I think, definitely aligning yourself with a company that you really believe in. Now, I started working with Kenchii not because, I always tell people this, it's funny. I don't use Kenchii products because they hired me and they said promote our products. I was a Kenchii customer. I was a Kenchii fan before I ever worked at the company, and I did a seminar on poodles. And when it was done, at the end of the class, I said, does anybody have any questions? And not one question was about poodle grooming. It was all about, what scissors are you using? What is that shear? What is that one? What kind of edge is that? So when the class let out, I packed up my stuff and I walked past the Kenchii booth, and I see all of my class, the entire class. I mean, we're talking about 200 people were around this booth. They were like 10 people deep, and they're all like, I want this, I want that. And they're all the scissors that I had just recommended. So I sat there and I watched them for a moment. And then I went up to Kenchii and I said, see all these people here? They're here because of me. I sent them here. So that's how our relationship started. We talked and I started working with them. But I think definitely going with a company and a product that you really like, that works for you. There's a lot of great products in the industry. For me, it was Kenchii shears that really worked well. They were comfortable in my hand. They were lightweight. They just really fit me. So that's what I went with, and that's what I used. And then eventually I worked with them, and I learned more about their products and what a great company they are and how I've grown with them. And they've gone from just having a few shear models to, you know, blow dryers and flat irons and stripping knives and brushes and combs and apparel. And so they're a great company to work with. And I think when you want to level up your grooming and you want to be better, you definitely have to experiment with different products, try different products, see what works for you, what works with your water, what fits in your hand, and, you know, go with that company. So when I chose Kenchii, you know, fortunately for me, they're a company that's very diverse. They have a huge variety of products. So I can use all of their products, and I love using their products. So it's been a great partnership between the two of us because they're a brand that I really stand behind. I don't promote them because they pay me. They pay me because I was a fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And would you say being a brand ambassador has helped to improve you as like a speaker or a groomer in itself?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Working with Kenchii has catapulted my career because I was new to speaking and judging when I started working with them, and being at every single show that they go to, it makes my presence, you know, in everybody's face. So people see me. My face has become sort of synonymous with the brand. And then it helps because when I'm at a show with Kenchii, it gives me the opportunity to judge at that show, to do seminars at that show, and it builds your following as far as people who really can relate to what you say and your experiences. That's how I teach. When I teach, I'm not like a book teacher. You know, I'm someone who teaches from personal experience. I tell a lot of stories about my own personal experience, what worked for me, what didn't work for me. Maybe something else will work for you. Maybe what I said will work for you. So I like to teach from experience, and you go try it. If it doesn't work for you, try somebody else's method. But if it works for you, then you learn something from me, and I'm happy that I could help.
Welcome to Quickfire Questions. In this segment, we ask Jonathan a series of questions, and all he has to do is tell us the first thing that pops into his head. This round of Quickfire Questions is brought to you by Le Pooch, a leader in providing high-quality grooming tools, luxurious fragrances, and gentle bathing products that will make the dogs in your salon feel like celebrities. So, number one, what is your favourite Kenchii line?
My favourite Kenchii line? Well, obviously, it's going to be the Lightnings by Jonathan David. But truthfully, I really love my line because we worked together, Sammy and I. Sammy is the owner of Kenchii. We worked together, and I told him what I like in a shear. I picked up many of the different Kenchii lines, and I said, I like this handle, I like this blade, I wanted to cut like this. I use thinning shears for a lot of layering. I wanted an aggressive thinner, so it was, I would have to say the Lightnings because I developed them, and they are to my specification. But my second pick that's not my own line would be the Shinobi line. And if you're more price conscious, the Loves are an absolutely amazing entry-level shear. A lot of people, they come to the booth and they say, oh, those are like a level 1. No, I don't want a level 1. Those are for beginners. No, level 1 has to do with the metals that we use, not your skill level.
They're a good, hard-working scissor.
They are hard-working. The Love shears, they're micro-serrated. They're really strong. They hold their edge. They've been one of our most popular sellers, and I always tell people, don't get confused by the levels. That just has to do with metal.
Yeah, and at Christies, they're by far one of our most popular. They're definitely our most popular Kenchii line. Is the Loves. Everybody loves them for everyday use.
Right. We love the Loves.
We love them. So, what do you do in your days off?
My days off, I live by the water. I live in South Florida, sunny South Florida.
Lovely, very jealous.
Yes, and I live on the intercoastal, so I'm very much a water person. On the weekends, when it's warm enough, I have a wave runner, so I take my jet ski out on the water, and it's free. I can go for hours and just explore the ocean and go up and down the coast. So generally, if it's sunny and it's time off, I'm out on the water.
And what's the best part of your job?
The best part of my job is that I get to play with dogs all day. No. The best part of my job is that I do something that I love. I work for myself. I don't have to answer to anybody, and if something goes wrong, I have to answer to myself. That's all. So I think, doing something you love is the best part of your job.
And would you rather be a groomer or a judge?
Well, I'm both, and I think you can't be a judge if you're not a groomer, because
but
then
if
you don't know.
If you had to pick one.
If I had to pick one to do all the time, I'd probably say the groomer, because even I haven't competed in a long time, okay? But I judge very actively at almost every show, and there's every once in a while I see somebody do a beautiful groom and then they go on to win Best in Show or something, and I think, do I want to jump back in the ring? But then I'm like, no, because it's competing is stressful. It's stressful, it's chaotic. I loved it when I did it. It was a great time. The camaraderie is amazing, but it does have its stresses. So if you're asking me which I would choose, judging or grooming, still the grooming, because I still get to be creative and do my thing.
Do your own thing. Where is your favorite place in the world?
My favorite place in the world so far, because I still have so many places on my bucket list, but so far, my favorite place has been Costa Rica. Costa Rica was the most lush, tropical, untouched paradise that I've ever been to, and I'm going to be going there next year for a milestone birthday with a group of friends, and I'm looking very forward to my 50th birthday in Costa Rica.
It's a good way to celebrate it. Great way to celebrate it.
Yeah.
I feel like I know the answer to this next one, but salon or mobile grooming?
Oh, mobile.
Yeah.
Mobile all the way.
Would you rather have a lazy Sunday or a productive Sunday?
Ooh, it's a toss-up. It's a 50-50, because if I've had a really, really long week, I like my lazy Sundays. Binge watching Netflix and ordering takeout and really just cutting off communication with the world.
Shutting down.
Shutting down, yeah. But, I'm not a party boy anymore. Those club days are far behind me, and I'm in bed at a very sad early time. So I really enjoy getting up early on a Sunday too, and getting outside and just enjoying the day. One thing I really hate is when the weekend passes me by and I'm back to work on Monday and I feel like I didn't do much on the weekend to de-stress myself. So I like to get out there and enjoy the day.
And final question, sum up your career in one word.
Ooh, that's a hard one. Sum up my career in one word. I would have to say exciting.
Exciting. Good word.
Yeah, it has been exciting.
You during the COVID pandemic, I know you moved from being salon-based to mobile-based. Can you maybe just talk us through that transition and why you decided to sort of change gears?
Yeah, so as everybody is feeling, this very strange time that we really could have only fathomed in a movie. My store was a very large salon. We employed 10 groomers, and we groomed about 50 dogs per day, and we were a retail store as well. So when the pandemic happened and we were forced to shut down for 6 weeks, when we reopened, we were not technically what they called people that were necessities. I'm forgetting the word, but so we weren't sure if we could reopen or not. So when we did finally reopen, they put a COVID testing center in the park behind our shopping plaza. So you had to enter on one side of our plaza and exit through the other, and it was scary. There was flashing signs with cones, and my clientele in the area I'm in is a very affluent area, but they're also very much retirees. So it's a lot of older people, and in the beginning, that's what the group of people that were most affected. So a lot of people were afraid to come out and come shopping, and we relied heavily on tourism, which stopped. So our retail came to a screeching halt. and our grooming dropped off significantly because people were just changing their lives. So we couldn't sustain our business anymore. And fortunately for me, we had purchased a mobile grooming van to expand our business. So in my situation, it was an easy transition because we closed the salon and I went mobile, as did many of my employees. But I was able to take a clientele that was already there and just shift from salon to mobile. Now, obviously, mobile is very limited, so I could only do a certain number of dogs, and so not everybody was able to get, on my list. But I used this opportunity to make changes. I decided I was only going to do smaller dogs. I've been grooming 33 years. So, I've done it all, but I'm not a young man anymore. And I'll keep my age to myself, but I just wanted to make my life a little easier. So I decided only small dogs. And my van is really equipped for smaller dogs anyway. And I just made the transition, and it was a necessity at the time, but I never realized that I was going to love it so much. And if I knew what I know now, 13 years ago when I bought the salon, I would have gone mobile then because I love it. The overhead is less. The stress is 10,000 times less, not having 10 employees. And I'm on my own schedule. I pick and choose which dogs I want to do. I've made my life comfortable, easy. Mobile pricing is higher. So it's just, there are expenses. I'm not going to say there aren't. There is the cost of the van. There's gas, which is a huge expense, but I'm happier. I'm happier than I was before. And for me, it was a great transition. And when people ask me, salon or mobile, what would you do? I always tell people, really give mobile a good thought. It's not great in every area. I'm in a warm climate. I don't have to deal with freezing pipes and snow and ice and stuff like that. But for me, in my area, in my life, in my weather, it's ideal. And I love the transition, and I wish I had done it 13 years ago. So if anybody's listening and they're thinking about toying with mobile, I would highly recommend you check it out. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think mobile is definitely especially suited to people who love working by themselves and sort of thrive in that independent energy where you do have your own freedom, you do have your own time, you're not having to deal with anybody else and it's just you and the dogs, and it's quite personal, I think, as well. Do you think there's any challenges that come with mobile?
Yes, I would definitely say, I'm on all of the mobile grooming groups on Facebook, and the number one thing that I see people posting about right now, because right now in the north they're having winter, and it's very harsh winter here in the States right now. They've had a lot of really bad snowstorms, and so a lot of people are complaining about having to cancel clients because they can't get the van out, the roads are too icy, their pipes are freezing, their lines are freezing, and I don't have to deal with any of that. So I think if you're in a cold climate and you have harsh winters, that's definitely something you have to think about. Where can you store your van at night that it's not going to freeze? You have to put heaters in so that things don't freeze overnight. Make sure you drain your water lines at night. There's a lot of extra maintenance for cold weather as opposed to warm weather. Now, put the weather aside, I think mobile's better. If you're in a warm climate, I just think it's better than a salon for the reasons that I'm also freer. I used, for 13 years, I went into a salon and I looked at 4 walls and a window, all day, every day. Now I'm by the beach sometimes. Sometimes I'm, in these beautiful country clubs. My clients bring me lunch, they make me lunch and bring it to the van. They make me coffee and smoothies, and it's just, it's a different relationship. It's much more relaxed. It's much more personal. So I think the biggest challenge is probably weather. The rest is all smooth sailing, in my opinion.
So you are obviously a major judge. What do you look out for when you are judging?
I get asked that a lot. That's a good question. And it's interesting because I've had this conversation with many different judges, and we all have different opinions of what is the most important aspect of a good groom. So for me, when I'm looking at a lineup of possible placements, I'm looking at first breed profile.
Yep.
If I look at this cocker, did you do the profile of a Cocker Spaniel properly? And it's interesting because, you know, in the UK versus the States, our styles are different on some of the breeds. So when we have people from the UK come over, or our people come over to the UK to compete, sometimes you have to adjust your style a little to be competitive. Unless you have a judge who really appreciates both styles from the different countries. That's why I think it's really helpful that I've had the great opportunity to be an international judge and to see many styles and go to the Worlds and see what other people do, because I have an appreciation for flair, which, you know, here in the States, it's all about parallel lines, very straight lines, very balanced. And in Europe, there's a lot of flair and a lot of stylizing, which I happen to be very, very much a fan of. So I look at profile. And then for me, the second most important thing is technical ability. Do I see scissor marks? If you used a blender, do I see the teeth marks of the blender? Because if I can see it, the customer can see it. And at the end of the day, this grooming competition, it's all about the work we're going to put out from day to day. Even though you win and you can do a beautiful show poodle and a beautiful show cocker or springer or whatever it is, you do so few of them in real life. The day-to-day grooming is pet grooming. So I'm looking at the technical because I want to see what kind of work do you actually put out. So your scissor work, your clipper work, the smoothness. And then when it comes down to like two really great grooms, what it comes down to is if I find something wrong, the way that I decide a winner is which is an easier fix. You know, if I saw a little hair left, you know, let's say a Bedlington, you clip the pattern on the face and I see one little hair out of place. And then I'm comparing that to the poodle next to them for best in show. And the poodle really needs the inside of one of the legs re-scissored. Clipping away a little piece of hair from the face versus scissoring a leg is an easier fix. So I'm going to give it to the person who just needs a little snip. So that's how it really comes down. It's a matter of finding your best and then knocking down the problems.
Yeah, and going off what you said earlier, I suppose a good bit about being a good competitor is being adaptable. So knowing your judges, knowing the country you're in, all those different things. Do you think that's an important trait to have?
Yes, I mean, for sure. I think a lot of the competitors, they do ask what my opinion is of a specific style. You know, they'll say, well, you know, I see so-and-so do it this way, and I see another person do it this way. Which is your preference? And I'm very honest. I'll say, I like flair. I like when people stylize their dogs. But there's a fine line between it being stylish and cartoony. You know, and I don't want you to cross over that line to where it then becomes no longer a balanced trim. You know, so definitely I have had competitors who have said, you know, oh, I saw that you were judging at such and such show, so I entered my dog because I know that you like my style of poodle. And that can be true. You know, there are certain people who I do like their style more than other competitors, but that's my personal opinion. It has nothing to do with the person or their personality. It's the work they put out. I happen to be more partial to certain styles than others. Again, that's why I think it's very important that the shows have a variety of judges so that when the whole point of all these competitions is we're trying to put together the best team to go to the Worlds eventually and represent your country at the Worlds. I mean, that's the whole point of Division A competition. So it's very important to have a well-rounded panel of judges to give an opinion, because if everything I put up is what goes to the Worlds, that might not necessarily be competitive against another country that has somebody else who does something even more stylistic. So I think knowing your judges, knowing what they like is a factor, but also you have to be true to yourself. You have to do what you do. Do what makes you a fabulous groomer, and that's how you'll prevail.
Now, we'll actually get into the proper nitty-gritty of grooming. If you had to give out 3 top tips to get a really great groom, what would your tips be?
Tip number 1. Prep work is everything. You have got I do a seminar. It's called Every Great Groom Starts with the Prep. Because if you don't do a good bath and blow dry and use the proper products to, seal the cuticle of the hair so that when you blow dry it, you get really straight volume on, let's say we're doing a poodle or a Bichon. If you're using products that dry out the coat, you're going to have trouble getting a comb through it. If you use products that are too heavy, your curly coat is going to be limp and it's going to, poodle top knot is going to part and separate on the head. So part of it is the prep, choosing the right products and doing a great bath and blowout, getting that hair poker straight. The second tip that I can say is work on your finish. A great finish is everything. What's that saying? The devil's in the details. Yeah. So it's the details. It's those fine little things, because sometimes I always tell people when you're looking at a groom, if your eye keeps going to one spot, you keep looking at that tuck up, it's because your brain is telling you there's something wrong there. Something doesn't work. So look at that tuck up and see what you can change to fix it. So your finish, your smooth scissoring, that's going to set you above. So your prep work, your finish, and the third thing is presentation. When you're doing a great groom and you finish a dog, and whether you're competing in the ring and you're presenting to a judge, or you're in a salon and you're presenting your finished groom to the pet owner, if you finish that dog at 10 a.m. and they're coming to pick the dog up at 2, so from 10 to 2, that dog is sitting in a kennel, and then they come and pick up the dog at 2, and you just throw the leash on and walk him out, he's going to look a little disheveled.
Yeah.
So before you take him out to the owner, take him out of the cage, run a comb through him again, fluff him up again, comb those ears out, make sure everything looks like it looked when you finished the dog.
Yeah.
So that you get that wow factor when you bring them out to the customer.
And I know you're a fan of the Beaver Terrier, but is that your favourite dog to groom, or do you have another breed specifically that you love grooming?
So the Beaver Terrier I'm a fan of, because I discovered the breed, and when I saw the first picture of a Beaver Terrier, and if people are not sure what a Beaver Terrier, it's spelled B-I-E-W-E-R, not beaver like the animal. It's Mr. and Mrs. Beaver from Germany who originally bred them. They look like a tri-colored Yorkshire Terrier, basically. They come from Yorkies in their background. I came across them because I saw a picture and I thought, what is this dog and why do I not know what this is? And I did some research on it, and I was so involved with the breed and getting them accepted by the American Kennel Club. I was president of the breed club at the time, and I really worked really hard to establish them in this country, and now they are around the world. And I love them. But their grooming is very basic. They're a drop coat with long hair. They get tipped ears and rounded feet, and that's basically all they get, unless you do a pet trim. So are they my favorite dog to breed, to groom? No, definitely not. I would have to say, and I know this is going to sound so typical, but I think my favorite is a poodle.
Classic poodle.
It's because poodles, you can do so much there. I look at dogs like a canvas. I mean, of course, they're a living, breathing animal, and first they're a companion that you love. But when I'm grooming, the dog is my canvas, and I'm creating a piece of art, right? It's a piece of sculpture when you think about it. In fact, there was a school in New York many years ago called the New School that was giving art degrees if you went to grooming school, because it was a form of sculpture. So you would get a degree in sculpture. I found that very interesting. But when I look at a poodle, for me, it is like sculpture, and you can do anything. You can make them into a modern trim, a continental, a German trim. You can make them look like a doodle, God forbid. But I mean, whatever it is, that's why I love grooming poodles, because sometimes it's just like you get in the zone and you're scissoring and you're creating these contours and these soft lines, and suddenly when it's all done and you look at the dog and you put them on the floor and they just float around, it's like, how can you get more elegant and more beautiful, So I would have to say, for scissor work, a poodle. But you know what I really love grooming? Yeah. Springer Spaniels. Really? I just love the breed.
Oh, they're lovely, aren't they? They're just so happy and bubbly.
The Springers here in the U.S., I don't know if you have any U.S. bred dogs in the UK, or, I noticed that Springers there are much more of a utility dog. They're a little bit more of a working dog. Here in the US, we don't use them for field trials or anything, and they are strictly a beautiful dog. So the coats here have gotten much longer. The head's a little bit more elongated. And when you have a Springer that's just dripping with coat, and you do a real standard trim with carding the back and using thinning shears and really doing everything beautifully, and that dog stands, I think it's just one of the most stunning creatures to look at. A beautiful, well-marked Springer, to me, is just, it's breathtaking.
And whenever you are grooming your dogs, what is the biggest problem that you face every day, and how do you combat it?
I think the biggest problem we face as groomers, I face it just like everybody else out there, and I know you're all going to appreciate when you hear this, is I wish people would brush their dogs. Honestly, I mean, I'm on a very regular schedule with my clients. I have people who do weekly, bi-weekly. It's very frequent. And still, I mean, I only leave hair on the ears and the tail. You have 2 places to brush. Please.
It still ends up matted.
Yes. So I think the biggest challenge for me is, and I think for everyone, is getting people to understand they have to brush their dog, and knowing that there are some people who just never will. So when they're that person who refuses to brush their dog, you have to be the professional. And a lot of groomers will come to me in my classes and say, well, when I tell people they need to brush their dog, but they won't let me cut them short, and that's where I stop them. They don't let you cut them short. You're providing a service. You have to explain to them, if you want your dog to look like this, this is what's required in the 6 weeks between visits to me. If you can't do requirements that I'm giving you, I can't do the haircut you want. It's very simple. Nobody goes to a surgeon and says, I want my gallbladder taken out, but I want you to do a very small incision. I don't want a lot of stitches. I want it done in 2 hours, and I want to go home the same day. Those are my demands. The surgeon's going to tell you, go skip rocks, So why can they get away with it with groomers to dictate to us how we're going to do our job, and they're not going to do what's required of them as a pet owner? So there's that. I think you have to become the authority, and a lot of groomers, I think, are afraid to establish themselves as the authority. And you don't have to be mean, you don't have to be nasty, you just have to say, listen, what you want and what you're willing to put in are 2 different things. So if you're not going to brush your dog, this is the haircut we need to do. And that's the reality of it. I'm sorry if that's not what you want to hear, but that's the truth, and that's the reality. If you want your dog to have 6 inches of hair, you either need to come into me weekly, or you need to brush your dog every day. If you can't do either of those things, this conversation is going to stop here, because I'm not the groomer for you, sweetheart. I'm sorry. That's just the way it goes. And it's okay to lose a customer. It's okay to let them walk away and become somebody else's nightmare.
Thank you so much for joining us in the Chat and Dematt podcast. It's been amazing to hear about your journey and all the amazing things you've accomplished. I actually think it's easier to say the things that you haven't accomplished. There's much less of them. But yeah, again, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast. And hopefully one day I'll get back to the UK when things are back to normal, and maybe I'll come to another Christies show one day.
Definitely. We'd love to have you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Chat and Dematt podcast. We've absolutely loved having Jonathan on. Remember to subscribe to our podcast so that you don't miss out on our next episode. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.